Welcome back. You're watching Beyond World is One with me, Raisha Sehgal, and this is Beyond Dispatch. Lots land of you on the show. Let's get you started with the headlines. In a televised address, Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei says his country would not surrender, warns that any US strike will have serious, irreparable consequences. In his first appearance since Friday, Khamenei warns Israel must face the consequences, says Iran will neither forgive the breach of its airspace nor forget the blood of its martyrs. Russian Foreign Ministry says we are millimeters away from catastrophe, citing daily Israeli strikes on Iran's nuclear infrastructure. Adds that Russia and the US are in touch on the conflict in West Asia. First flying carrying Indian students returning from Iran to reach New Delhi tonight. 90 students from Kashmir on board. The operation has been facilitated by the Indian government. Prime Minister Modi lands in Croatian capital Zagreb on the last leg of his three-nation tour. Prime Minister Modi attended the G7 meeting in Canada and had earlier visited Cyprus. "206 victims of the Air India crash now identified through DNA testing. 169 of the mortal remains have been returned to the families of the victims." We have some latest breaking news coming in from West Asia as Israel and Iran's air war rages on. Iran media says multiple explosions were heard in the Iranian capital, Tehran. The series of blasts were heard shortly before 12 noon local time on the sixth day of the most intense exchange of fire between the arch force Iran and Israel. And that's the news coming in that Iranian media says multiple explosions were heard in the Iranian capital, Tehran. This, of course, comes shortly after Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei said that Iran will not surrender and will not accept imposed war or peace. And what we're getting right now is that the Iranian media has said multiple explosions were heard in the Iranian capital, Tehran. This also comes hours after Israel claimed to hit centrifuge production site and missile factories in Tehran. It is the sixth day of the Iran-Israel conflict as both the countries continue to attack each other. Early in the day, Iranian media claimed Israeli Hermes drone was shot down over Isfahan province. But what we're getting right now, the latest coming in is that as Israel and Iran's air war rages on, Iranian media says that multiple explosions were heard in the Iranian capital, Tehran.
Good evening. A fugitive driver in a stolen Land Cruiser has barreled into Northland Shopping Centre, ploughing through one entrance before speeding out the other side.
Customers watched in disbelief as the four-wheel drive hurtled past shops during the after-school rush. Stephanie Anderson reports.
Pure chaos as a Land Cruiser hurtles through Northland. It's just centimetres from shoppers who heard it before they saw it.
It sounded like gunshots.
I just heard people yelling and crying. A white four-wheel drive went flying past, probably about 15 metres from me.
Speeding past Kmart, Target and a cafe, the driver of the stolen four-wheel drive was on the run from police. They'd tried to block him outside. This was him getting away.
We just got them to lock down the doors, but yeah, it was full on.
We were just trying to make sure everyone was fine. There was no one that was hit.
Pretty bad. He could have hit somebody.
He smashed through one entrance and slammed his way out the other side of the centre. One woman was treated for shock. Incredibly, no one else was injured. But tonight, Northland and its customers are once again on edge.
Not long ago there was the big machete attack and now this. It's scary.
OK, let's get more on this now from Stephanie at Northland. Steph, the shopping centre is still a major crime scene.
Yeah, it absolutely is, Alicia, and you'd imagine it will be for quite some time. Now, where I'm standing is actually where that Land Cruiser exited the centre, and we want to show you what that looks like. There's obviously still police and centre management here. You can see there's smashed glass, and a bollard here at this pedestrian crossing has been close to flattened. Now, that Land Cruiser, the stolen Land Cruiser, and the man who was behind the wheel of it are still outstanding. They managed to flee from police and were last seen heading towards Wood Street. The centre itself, it would have already been closed by this time. The supermarkets have remained open as normal, and centre management have told us it was never sent into lockdown. We are hoping to hear from police shortly with some more details about where that Land Cruiser has headed, but anyone with information is obviously being urged to get in touch with police tonight, Alicia.
OK, Stephanie Anderson at Northland, thank you.
This is a really simple amendment. It's been backed by over 300 MPs today, and once this bill passes in the House, that law will come into place straight away, and that's a really good news for those women that currently find themselves in the system.
137. So the ayes have it. This is something that we've been campaigning for many years. This vote today will put an end to the horrendous police investigations many women in this country have been undergoing in recent years for suspected illegal abortions.
Frankly, the sector itself used to say mattered.
مجزرة كله مقطع، مجزرة أولاد صغار بأمهاتهم، مجزرة مش عارف. أنا بدور على أخواتي ولاد عم مش لاقي ولا واحد فيهم. أنا إيش الحياة اللي إحنا عايشينها هذه؟ العالم يطلعونا مكفر الحياة، ارحمونا.
هذا كمين يما مش مساعدات يما، هذا كمين يما للشباب يما، مش عشان يطعموهم عشان يقتلوهم يما. حسبي الله ونعم الوكيل يا رب، يا رب كل ظالم يا رب، وكل حاكم عربي يا رب ما وقف شفنا ولا وقف الحرب يا رب، ينتقم منهم يا رب.
Thank you very much for joining me. In the year 2025, one might have hoped that the global community would be working together to address the existential threat of climate change, working to prevent future pandemics, working to address the massive levels of income and wealth inequality that exist, working to improve the standard of living of struggling people all over the world. But tragically, that is not where we are today, quite the contrary. Instead of addressing the major crises that we face, the world is now looking at the terrible war in Ukraine, started by Putin, which has taken hundreds of thousands of lives over the last 3 years. We are looking at the horrific war in Gaza, where, as we speak, thousands of Palestinian children are facing starvation due to Israel's inhumane and illegal war policies. And now we face a dangerous and escalating war in Iran, which was begun in violation of international law by the extremist Netanyahu government. And the main point that I want to make today is that it is absolutely imperative that the United States not be dragged into this war. Let me say a word about how this war began. On Thursday, Netanyahu launched an illegal and unilateral surprise attack on Iran, bombing targets across the country and killing hundreds of people. Iran has responded with attacks of its own, which have killed dozens of people in Israel. Whatever you may think of the corrupt and authoritarian Iranian regime, Israel's attack clearly violated international law and the United Nations Charter. While every country has the right to defend itself, they do not have the right to launch so-called preemptive wars of this kind. But let's remember who Netanyahu is. He is a war criminal under indictment by the International Criminal Court for starving innocent people and killing civilians in Gaza. At this very moment, in Gaza, Israel continues to prevent the UN from delivering humanitarian aid. And just today, in Gaza, Israeli tanks fired into a crowd desperately trying to collect food, killing at least 59 people. So it should come as little surprise that Netanyahu ignored international law to start this war with Iran. But Netanyahu's decision to strike also directly contravened the express wishes of the United States, which was seeking a diplomatic resolution to the long-standing tensions around Iran's nuclear program. In recent months, the United States has held 5 rounds of negotiations with Iran to resolve these long-standing concerns. Let me repeat. In recent months, the United States has held 5 rounds of negotiations with Iran to resolve these long-standing concerns. A 6th round of talks was planned for Sunday, but Netanyahu chose instead to start this war. So let's be clear. Israel's attack was specifically designed to sabotage American diplomatic efforts. In fact, in its first round of strikes, Israel assassinated the man overseeing Iran's nuclear negotiating team. And let's also remember that U.S. intelligence has never indicated that Iran has made the decision to build a nuclear weapon. Just a few months ago, Trump's own Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, testified to Congress that, quote, the intelligence community continues to assess that Iran is not building a nuclear weapon, end of quote. But Netanyahu chose to attack, crippling diplomatic efforts and risking a full-blown regional war. He is now openly talking about regime change in Iran and threatening to kill the political leadership of that country without any thought to the chaos that might ensue. Let's also not forget that the current Islamic regime in Iran is itself the product of a Western-backed coup in 1953 that overthrew the democratically elected government of Iran and replaced it with a corrupt autocrat. The critical question now is whether the United States will get dragged into Netanyahu's war. In my view, that would be a disaster. The United States must not be involved with another Netanyahu war, not militarily or financially. The United States Constitution is crystal clear. There can be no offensive use of military force against Iran or any other country without an explicit authorization from Congress. No such authorization exists, and any U.S. involvement would therefore be illegal. The United States has already provided hundreds of billions of dollars to Israel over the last many decades. Last year alone, U.S. taxpayers provided more than $22 billion in military aid to Israel. Meanwhile, while providing massive aid to Israel, we have Americans sleeping out on the street, unable to afford health care or other basic necessities. Enough is enough. President Trump ran as a supposed peace candidate. In his inaugural address, he said, and I quote, "My proudest legacy will be that of a peacemaker and unifier. That's what I want to be, a peacemaker and a unifier," end quote. Very fine words. Trump should remember them today. Supporting Netanyahu's war against Iran would be a catastrophic mistake. Instead of going to war, Trump must work with the international community to rein in Netanyahu and urgently push for a diplomatic solution. Netanyahu's illegal attack has made the world a more dangerous place. The United States must not be a part of this war. Thank you very much.